We're now ready to assemble the lamp. So we need the 4 component parts that you've previously made, and we also need some standard components which are provided as step files. Now the exploded assembly here shows us how the lamp should assemble, the order that all the parts go, and there's also a parts list. We're going to start by bringing in the lamp base, connecting that to the stem, and then underneath we will need a washer and a nut. The first piece I'm bringing in is the lamp base, and with any assembly the first thing you should do is ground the first component. So I'm going to stick that into the 3D space, and that will make assembly much easier. Next, the lamp stem. Now when I bring that in, I can see it's facing the wrong direction. It's good practice to make sure that any part you bring in, you rotate it to make it face the right way before assembly. Now with free rotate, you have little control. I will show you an easier way to use the free rotate. Use your view cube to look directly at your component, and where you move your cursor will change the way that the component moves. So you can see here how the cursor changes its shape, changes its direction, depending on where I move it to. So if I move it here, you can see how it spins this way. If I move it up here, it spins forward and back. But we wanted to spin it along a vertical axis. So I'm going to go here and spin it round 180 degrees. Okay, so use that technique to help you keep as much control as you can. And as I said, make sure you kind of get your components roughly in the right direction before assembly. Now I can see the base of the stem inserts into that top cylindrical extrusion of the base. So I'm going to use the insert command. This will line up the center axis and will also connect the edges that I want to actually touch together. So on the stem, the very top here will physically touch the top of the base. Okay, so be careful when you're selecting your edges, think about what would actually touch once it's put in. So that will touch here, and click apply. Now I can see here that the stem still rotates. So whenever you do an insert, if you don't want it to move, you will generally have to do a second constraint to stop it moving. Now I don't have any sort of flat surfaces to work from here that I can see, but I do have them within the origin. These are the work planes. So I'm going to mate together the YZ plane of the lamp stem along with the YZ plane of the lamp base. So go over to your modelling tree, to the component, to its origin, and there you will find its planes. And you can see here, when I mate them together, it lines them completely together with one another. Okay, so that was insert and then mating the work planes. Now I'm going to use my view cube to look underneath here, and this is where the washer and nut will go. These are step files, so I'm just changing the file type to step file to find them. Now as I've brought these in, I can see that there is some geometry, so that blue lines, which I want to hide. So I'm going to right click and edit the washer. And this will allow me to go into the modelling tree and turn off the visibility of the geometry. And I'm going to do the same for the nut. So you can either right click directly on it to edit, or right click from the modelling tree. And turning off the visibility of the geometry. And you can see here then blue lines are now all invisible. Going to use the insert command again, because they're going onto a cylinder, and just being careful to select the correct edges that would physically touch when they join. Now I'm not going to bother making the work planes of these parts. You can see here they rotate, but that doesn't impact the assembly, so I will just leave them as they are. I'm now going to bring in the lamp boss, and that'll go onto the top of the stem. Changing the file type to component parts. And I can see here once I've brought it in that the boss is facing the wrong direction. So I'm going to use that same technique I showed you before. Don't just free rotate in any direction. Move your cursor to give yourself as much control, and that'll make things a lot easier for you. So get that roughly into the right position, and then I can assemble it together. Now the cylindrical extrusion of the boss is going to insert onto the top of the stem. So I can use that insert command again, making sure to select the correct edges. And same as before with the stem to the base, it can rotate because I've only got one constraint onto it. So I'm going to have to now constrain the work planes again to stop that from rotating. So I'm going to get the work plane in the stem and the work plane in the boss. So I'm going to the YZ plane, and I'm actually going to turn on the visibility of this and the visibility of the YZ plane within the stem, just to show you something here. Okay, so if I look face on at it, you can actually see that due to the way that I made the boss, the YZ plane is not directly in the centre where we need it to be. So what I'm actually going to do is move it from here across into the middle by offsetting the work plane. I know the width of the boss is 20 mil, so I'm just going to offset it by 10. Now I'm just going back into the modelling tree to turn off the visibility of that original YZ plane in the lamp boss. This is just good practice. Turn off and on work planes as you go so that you don't have too much going on within your assembly, and that'll help just keep things nice and clear. Okay, so I can just double check in that that can't move. So it's definitely stuck on and in the correct position. I can now turn off the visibility of them two work planes. And the next thing I'm going to do is bring in the two machine screws that go into the boss. These are step files, so I'm just going to double check that I change the file type to step file, and then I can bring them in. So I just turned off the visibility of some geometry that was on them machine screws. Going back to the work plane just to check the orientation that these screws should be, and going to move them and rotate them the correct way before assembly. Now the screws insert into the holes in the boss. So I'm going to start by trying insert, but you can see here that it doesn't actually pick up the hole that I want it to go into. Now the reason for that is this curved surface. So because the boss is not just a rectangular extrusion, it's actually got that curved arc, the insert command will not work. You can see here, like, it doesn't pick up that centre. So I'm still going to use the centre axis, but instead of insert, I'm going to use the mate command. So I'm going to line up the centre axis of the machine screw with the centre axis of the hole that it's going into. Okay, so you can see the centre axis of both parts is mated together. The screw can move along the centre axis, but cannot move off of it. Now what I need is to get the screw into the correct position. So I want the screw to touch that curved surface. So I'm just going to orientate round and show you first of all the mate command. So I want this part here, this underside of the machine screw, to touch the very outer face of this part. Now you can see when I try and just do that, it doesn't work. And again, that's due to that curved surface. Okay, that curved surface of the boss does not allow me to just mate directly onto it. So what I need to do instead is create a flat surface here that it can stick onto instead. And I can place flat surfaces by using work planes. So I can put a work plane onto the tangent surface. So I've just opened up the boss, placing a work plane where I want the machine screw to stick. And now I can use the mate command and stick it onto here. Okay, so if you have that issue with any models, if you can't connect because there's a curved surface, create a flat surface by using a work plane. And I'm just going to repeat the process with the other machine screw. Keep in mind when you make a work plane, that work plane isn't just, see like in this area here, it's not just that small square. The work plane continues on indefinitely. So although I'm clicking up here, it is going to move that machine screw at the bottom into the correct position because that plane kind of carries all the way down. Now just turning off the visibility of them planes, keeping my assembly nice and clear. And the next thing I can do is bring in the shade and attach that onto the machine screws. Now because I'm putting the screws once again through a curved surface, I'm going to mate their centre axis together. And I'm just going to move the shades so I can see the bottom screw, and I'm going to do the same to it. So the centre axis of the hole, the centre axis of the screw, and mate them together. So you can see here the shade is in the correct position and it can slide along that axis. Now I want it to stop moving. I want it to be positioned right up against the boss. Now because it is two curved surfaces joining together, I'll be able to just mate these. Okay, so there's no issues with a flat surface to a curved surface. They are both curved, so they'll be able to just mate and kind of fit snugly together. And there we have the completed assembly. So we've got all the component parts all fitting together and just double checking they can't move. And that's how to assemble the lamp.